Of all the cruel jokes the universe could play, this one felt the sharpest. I spent years convincing myself he was nothing more than a mistake, a chapter closed and burned. But there he was, Daniel, sitting across from me at my mother's oak dining table as if the past hadn't already shattered us both. His eyes found mine the way they always used to, piercing through whatever fragile armor I thought I had built. It was like looking into a mirror of everything I had tried to forget. Late nights under stars, whispered promises, the taste of freedom wrapped in his kiss. And now, with the smell of roasted chicken and my sister's laughter in the air, all I could think was, why him, why now, why here? The irony was suffocating. My family had no idea. To them, Daniel was just Claire's fiancé's younger brother, a polite guest invited to our family dinner. To me, he was the boy I once loved so fiercely it nearly destroyed me, the boy I swore I would never see again. And yet fate had shoved us into the same room, across the same table, daring us not to break. My fork scraped against porcelain, too loud in the silence between us. "So, Ethan," my father said, oblivious, "how's work been treating you? Busy?" I muttered, eyes darting back to Daniel despite myself. He hadn't touched his food. His hand trembled slightly around the stem of his glass, and I knew instantly he was just as wrecked as I was. Our history was a wound that had never healed, one carved by lies, by fear, by the weight of expectations neither of us were strong enough to fight back then. And now, sitting across from him, the memory of that last night came rushing back. His tears, my silence, the way we both walked away bleeding. But here's the thing about love. It never dies quietly. It haunts, it lingers, it waits. And the way Daniel's eyes softened when no one was looking, the way his lips parted like he wanted to speak my name, it was enough to make me realize that whatever war we thought we ended, it was only just beginning. Dinner chatter filled the air. Stories, laughter, casual questions, but none of it reached me. All I could hear was the pounding of my own heart and the echo of the past clawing its way back. And then, as if testing how much cruelty I could endure, my mother leaned in with a smile and said, "Ethan, why don't you and Daniel catch up after dinner? You're both around the same age. I'm sure you'll have things in common." I nearly choked. Daniel's fork clattered against his plate. My sister shot him a quick look, but he covered it with a polite smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. I wondered if she had any idea what her fiancé's brother had been to me. I doubted it. The truth was buried too deep, hidden under years of silence. But tonight it clawed its way to the surface. The air outside was crisp, autumn biting gently at the edges of the night. The backyard smelled of pine and distant smoke. My mother had insisted on everyone staying for dessert, but Daniel had slipped out early, murmuring something about fresh air. My chest burned as I followed minutes later, telling myself I just needed space. He was standing by the old maple tree, the same one I used to climb as a kid. His hands were shoved into his pockets, his shoulders tight. I stopped a few feet away, unsure if I wanted to punch him or kiss him, maybe both. "You look the same," he said without turning. His voice was quiet, almost trembling, like he wasn't sure if speaking would break the fragile spell holding us in place. "Older, maybe, but still you." A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "Don't start with that. Not here. Not now." Finally, he faced me, and it was like a dam burst inside me. His eyes shimmered under the porch light, and I hated how much I still wanted him. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear, Ethan, if I had known this dinner was happening, You would have what?" My voice cracked sharper than I intended. "Run again?" Disappeared without a word. Like before. His face fell, and for a moment, he looked 19 again. Fragile, terrified, standing in front of me the night he chose silence over us. "I never wanted to hurt you," he whispered. "You know why I left?" "Yeah," I said, bitterness choking me. "Because it was easier to live with their approval than with me." The truth hung heavy in the air. He didn't deny it because he couldn't. Back then, the weight of family, of expectations had been too much, and I had been the casualty of his fear. But the years hadn't erased what was between us. They had only sharpened it, turned it into something raw and dangerous. He stepped closer, just a fraction, but enough to make my heart stumble. "You think I stopped loving you?" His voice was hoarse, almost broken. "God, Ethan, I never stopped. Not once. I didn't know how to be brave back then. I should have turned away. I should have told him to go to hell. Instead, I found myself whispering, 'And now?'" He didn't answer with words. He just looked at me with that same desperate tenderness I remembered, the one that had always undone me. And for the first time in years, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, some promises weren't meant to last. That night, long after the guests had left and the house had gone quiet, I lay awake replaying every glance, every word, every ghost of a touch. My chest ached with longing I thought I had buried. Because the truth was, no matter how much I hated him for breaking me, part of me had never stopped waiting. And Daniel, sitting across from me at that dinner table, with his hands shaking and his eyes begging for forgiveness, looked like a man who had been waiting too. What terrified me most was that I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe we could rewrite the ending. But the past has a way of clinging like shadows. And if the years had taught me anything, it was that love between two men in our world came at a cost. The question was, were we finally ready to pay it? The morning after the dinner felt like walking into a minefield. I woke up with the sour taste of memory clinging to my mouth and the restless rhythm of Daniel's voice replaying in my skull. He had said he never stopped loving me, as if those words could erase the years of silence, the weight of abandonment, as if love alone could resurrect what fear had buried. I pushed out of bed, the hardwood floor cold against my bare feet. Downstairs, I could already hear my mother humming, the sound of a frying pan sizzling with bacon. A normal Saturday morning, like the world hadn't shifted beneath my feet just hours before. That was the thing about family houses. They swallowed secrets, muffled them under the smell of coffee and pancakes. But secrets always found their way out. By the time I came downstairs, Daniel was already in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with a mug of coffee. My mother moved around him with ease, as if he belonged here, as if he hadn't once broken me so completely I almost forgot how to breathe. Our eyes met, and for a fraction of a second, I saw the boy he used to be. The boy who once traced constellations across my back with his fingertip, who whispered that forever could be ours if we just held on. But then my mother turned, smiling, and the moment shattered. "Morning, sweetheart," she said. "Daniel was just telling me about his plans to move back to town for work. Isn't that wonderful?" My stomach lurched. Back here, in this town, the very place we once swore we'd leave behind together. "That's so?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. Daniel nodded, gripping his mug like it was the only thing keeping him standing. "I got an offer at the hospital," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were chaos. It felt like the right time, after years of nothing, of silence, of me learning how to stitch myself back together. Now was the right time? My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. I muttered something vague and excused myself to the porch. The crisp morning air hit me like a slap. I needed space, oxygen, anything but him. But of course, fate wasn't done torturing me. Within minutes, the door creaked open, and Daniel stepped out, his expression etched with something between desperation and determination. "Ethan," he started. I cut him off. "Don't. Not here. Not with them inside." He looked at me, and I hated how much pain I saw there. "Then meet me later," he said. "Please, just give me a chance to explain everything." I should have said no. I should have walked back inside, slammed the door, let the past rot where it belonged. But the truth was, I had spent years starving for answers, for closure, for something to make sense of the way he left me in pieces. So I nodded against all reason. And just like that, the trap was set. We met that evening at the lake. The same lake where we used to sneak away in the summers, where our laughter once bounced across the water, where we carved our names into the old wooden dock like kids who thought forever was theirs to claim. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky with strokes of orange and gold. Daniel was already there, sitting at the edge of the dock with his shoes off, feet dangling into the water. It was so achingly familiar it made me want to scream. "You shouldn't have come," I said as I approached. My voice was steady, but my chest felt like it was caving in. He turned, and for a moment, his face softened with something like relief. "But you did." I sat down beside him, leaving a careful space between us. The air smelled of pine and lake water, the kind of scent that carried memory like smoke. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't unbearable either. It was heavy, thick with everything unsaid. Finally, Daniel broke it. "Do you remember the night we swore we'd leave? The night we promised this place would never own us?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, I also remember the night you broke that promise." He flinched, as if the words were a slap. "I was terrified, Ethan. My family, God, the things they said when they found out about us. I wasn't strong enough. I wanted to be. But you chose them over me," I snapped. "That's the bottom line." His eyes glistened, and for a second, I thought he might cry. "I chose survival," he whispered, "and I hate myself every day for it." The anger in me burned bright, but beneath it was something far more dangerous. The echo of hope. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, he meant every word. "You don't get to just show up years later and say sorry," I said, my voice trembling. "You don't get to drop back into my life like nothing happened." "I'm not asking for nothing," he said, his voice fierce now. "I'm asking for a chance. To prove that I'm not the same coward who left. To show you that I never stopped loving you." The way he said it, it cracked something in me. I wanted to believe him, but belief was a dangerous thing. It was a door that once opened could never be shut again. I turned away, staring out at the water where the sunset bled into the waves. "What if I don't have anything left to give you? Then let me give you mine," he said. His hand hovered near mine, close enough that I could feel the heat of it, but he didn't touch. He was waiting, always waiting, for me to decide. And in that moment, I hated him for giving me the choice. Because deep down, I knew what I wanted, and it terrified me. The weeks that followed were a blur of stolen glances, awkward family dinners, and late-night conversations that felt like slipping back into an old skin. Daniel made it impossible to ignore him, showing up at the diner where I grabbed coffee, lingering outside the bookstore I frequented, finding excuses to cross my path. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt like gravity pulling me toward something I had spent years pretending I didn't need. But the world hadn't changed. This was still small-town America, where whispers traveled faster than the wind and two men in love was still something to hide. And the deeper Daniel and I fell back into orbit, the more dangerous it became. One night, after too much whiskey at the local bar, a group of men cornered us in the parking lot. They were old classmates, the kind who had always thrown around slurs like knives. "Look at this," one of them sneered, shoving Daniel's shoulder. "Didn't know you two were still playing house." The rage that surged through me was blinding. I shoved him back, fists clenched, but Daniel grabbed my arm before I could throw a punch. His eyes begged me to stand down. "Not here," he whispered. "Not like this." So we walked away, humiliated, my knuckles aching for the fight I didn't get. And as we drove off, the silence between us was louder than any insult they had thrown. "Is this what you want?" I finally asked, my voice raw. "To live like this? Hiding? taking punches and pretending it doesn't hurt. Daniel's hand reached for mine, tentative but steady. "I don't want to hide anymore," he said. "Not from them, not from anyone. But I can't do it without you." His words pierced me deeper than any fist could. Because the truth was, I didn't want to hide either. I wanted to stand in the open, to claim him, to scream to the world that he was mine. But I also knew the cost. The stares, the judgment, the possibility of losing the family that meant everything to me. And yet, sitting in that car with him, the choice didn't feel like a choice at all. It felt inevitable. That night, as we sat in his car outside my house, the air thick with everything we hadn't said, he leaned closer. His breath brushed my cheek, his lips just inches from mine. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might give out. "Ethan," he whispered, "tell me to stop and I will. But if you don't, if you let me kiss you, then I'm never letting go again." I closed my eyes. I thought of the boy he had been, the man he was now, the years we had lost, the pain, the longing, the unshakable truth that no one had ever made me feel like he did. And then I kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't tentative. It was years of grief and anger and love crashing together in one desperate, breathless moment. His hands tangled in my hair, mine fisted in his shirt, and for the first time in forever, I felt whole. When we finally pulled apart, gasping, his forehead rested against mine. "I meant it," he said. "Never again. I'm not losing you again." And though fear still clawed at my chest, for the first time, I believed him. I believed us. The next morning, sunlight spilled across my room like a challenge. My lips still tingled from his kiss. My body still hummed with the weight of his touch. But more than that, my heart felt like it was standing at a crossroads. One path leading back into the dark, safe loneliness I had built for myself. The other toward something terrifyingly bright and uncertain. Downstairs, the house was alive with the sound of family. My mother laughed at something on the phone. My sister rattled dishes in the sink. Daniel was gone, or at least not in sight. A small part of me hoped he had run again. It would have been easier to hate him. But another part of me, the part that had kissed him last night like a man drowning, prayed he would stay. I poured coffee and stepped onto the porch. The morning smelled of damp grass and something sweet from the bakery down the street. It was our town's way of pretending the world was simple. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Daniel's truck was parked at the curb. He was sitting on the hood, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, head bowed like he was waiting for judgment. When he looked up and saw me, his face broke into a small, cautious smile. It was the kind of smile that made my chest ache. "Morning," he said softly. "You're still here," I replied. "I told you," he said. "I'm not running this time." The words hung between us, fragile and dangerous. I sat down on the steps, keeping the porch railing between us like a line neither of us knew how to cross in daylight. "So what now?" I asked, staring at the steam rising from my coffee. "You kiss me, you say you've changed, and then what? We just pretend the last 6 years didn't happen." "No," he said. "We face them. Together." The word together cracked something open in me. It felt like a promise, but it also felt like a threat. Together meant exposure. Together meant risk. Together meant choosing him over the safety of silence. "I don't know if I can do that," I whispered. "You don't have to decide right now," he said. "Just don't push me away before we even try." We started seeing each other in secret, not because we wanted to hide, but because the world we lived in still made hiding feel like survival. We'd meet at the lake, at the back booth of the diner after closing, in the quiet aisles of the bookstore where no one paid attention. Each moment felt stolen, but it also felt more real than anything else in my life. One night at the lake, under a sky streaked with stars, Daniel lay on his back, staring up at the constellations like he used to. His hand found mine, fingers curling with an ease that was both familiar and heartbreaking. "I used to dream about this," he said quietly. "That I'd get a second chance. That you'd look at me again like you used to." I turned my head to study him. The years had carved new lines into his face, but the boy I'd loved was still there, hidden beneath the man he'd become. "You broke me?" I said, not accusing, just stating a fact. "I know," he whispered, "and if it takes the rest of my life to fix what I broke, I'll do it." The sincerity in his voice scared me more than his silence ever had, because I realized then that he wasn't here for an apology. He was here for us. But the world started to notice. It began with whispers. People seeing us at the diner, a neighbor spotting his truck outside my house late at night. In a town like ours, rumor was currency, and soon it reached my family. One Sunday afternoon, my sister cornered me in the kitchen. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice sharp but her eyes worried. "You and Daniel?" I froze, my heart hammering. "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter who," she said. "What matters is that Mom's going to find out, and when she does." "When she does what?" I snapped. "I'm a grown man. I don't need her permission to live my life." Her face softened. "I'm not judging you, Ethan. I don't want you to get hurt again." The irony made me laugh, bitter and low. "It's too late for that." She reached out, touching my arm. "Then at least make sure he's worth it." I thought of Daniel's eyes when he said together. I thought of the way he kissed me like he'd been starving for years. "He is," I said quietly. The confrontation with my mother came a week later. She had always been kind, but she had also always been a product of this town, of its unspoken rules. She called me into the living room after dinner, her face pale, her hands wringing a dish towel. "I heard something," she said, "about you and Daniel." I sat across from her, bracing myself. And I just don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "After everything, why would you go back to him?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "Because I never stopped loving him." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Ethan, you know what people will say, what they'll do." "I don't care anymore," I said. "I've lived my whole life caring, and it's never made me happy." For a long moment, she just stared at me. Then she sighed, the fight draining out of her. "I just want you to be safe," she whispered. "I know," I said, "but I also want to be free." She reached over and took my hand, squeezing it. "Then be careful, please." It wasn't approval, but it was something. And for now, it was enough. Daniel and I stopped hiding after that. Not out of defiance, but because hiding felt like a slow death. We started showing up places together, coffee shops, the farmer's market, even church once, though that felt like tempting fate. People stared. Some whispered. A few offered quiet smiles, as if to say they were rooting for us. But others weren't so kind. One evening, as we left the grocery store, someone had keyed Daniel's truck. The word F had been carved into the paint. He stared at it for a long time, his hands trembling on the steering wheel. I reached over, covering his hand with mine. "They don't get to win," I said. His jaw clenched. "I'm not scared for me," he said. "I'm scared for you." "We're in this together," I said, echoing his own words back to him. "Remember." Slowly he nodded. "Together," he whispered. We began to build a new rhythm. Sunday mornings at the lake. Weeknight dinners where we cooked in my kitchen, bumping hips and laughing at burned toast. He'd fall asleep on my couch, his head in my lap, my fingers tracing idle patterns through his hair. It wasn't perfect. There were still arguments, still moments when old wounds flared, but it was real. It was ours. One night, he surprised me with a box. Inside was a key. "To my place," he said. "It's not much, but it's home. And I want you there." I stared at it, my heart pounding. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," he said. "I lost you once because I was scared. I'm not making that mistake again." I closed my fingers around the key, feeling its weight. "Then I'm all in," I said. His smile then, it was the kind of smile that made you believe in second chances. But second chances don't come without tests. One evening, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper with 4 words scrawled in block letters. "You'll regret this." My hands shook as I read it. Daniel was furious when he saw, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. "We should go to the police," he said. "They won't do anything," I muttered. "Not here." "Then I'll handle it myself," he growled. I grabbed his arm. "No, that's what they want. For us to be scared, to fight back and look like the villains." He stopped, breathing hard. "I can't lose you," he said. "Not again." "You won't," I said. "Not this time." And even though my own fear clawed at me, I meant it. Weeks passed. The whispers didn't stop, but they got quieter. Some people began to treat us like any other couple. Others never would. But slowly, the town's grip on us loosened. We carved out a life in the spaces between its judgment. We built something new out of the ashes of what we once had. One evening at the lake, under a sky streaked with violet and gold, Daniel turned to me, his expression soft but certain. "I've been thinking," he said, "about forever." I raised an eyebrow. "Forever?" He smiled faintly. "Not in the cheesy way, in the real way, in the wake up next to you, build a life kind of way." My heart stumbled. "Daniel, I'm not asking for an answer tonight," he said. "I'm just asking if you can imagine it. Not just surviving. Living." I looked at him, really looked at him. The boy I'd loved, the man he'd become, the life we'd started to build despite everything. And for the first time, I didn't just want it. I believed it could happen. "I can imagine it," I said softly. His hand found mine, warm and steady. "Then that's enough," he whispered. And as the sun sank behind the trees, the world felt, for a moment, like it belonged to us. The letter was only the beginning. Weeks later, we started noticing the same black truck parked down the street from Daniel's apartment, the same shadow trailing us when we walked home from the diner. At first, I thought it was paranoia, the residue of years spent hiding. But then one night, Daniel's window was smashed, glass scattered across his living room floor like shards of warning. "This isn't random," he muttered, sweeping the glass into a pile. His jaw was tight, his hands shaking. "They want us scared. And it's working," I admitted, my voice low. Fear crawled through my veins, cold and relentless. But more than fear, there was anger. Anger at a world that still believed love was something to punish. Daniel crossed the room and grabbed my hands, his grip fierce. "Listen to me. No matter what they do, no matter what they say, I'm not leaving you this time. Not ever." The words should have comforted me, but instead, they carved deeper into my heart. Because I knew promises weren't always enough. I knew how easily love could be ripped away. The breaking point came one Saturday night. We were walking back from the lake, laughter still echoing from some stupid joke he'd told. Then it happened. A group of men stepped out from behind the trees, blocking our path. The same ones from the bar, their sneers sharper under the moonlight. "Well, look who it is," one of them jeered. "The lovebirds." Daniel instinctively moved in front of me. "We're not looking for trouble," he said calmly. But trouble had already found us. The tallest one shoved Daniel hard, sending him stumbling back. My blood roared as I lunged forward, but another man caught my arm, twisting it until pain shot through me. "You think you can flaunt this sickness in our town?" the man snarled. "Not here. Not ever." Something inside me snapped. I ripped my arm free, fury exploding through me. For years, I had swallowed their slurs, their judgment, their hate. But not tonight. Not with Daniel beside me. I swung, my fist connecting with a jaw. Daniel was right there with me, shoving, blocking, protecting. It was chaos, grunts, fists, the taste of blood in my mouth. And then headlights swept across us, freezing everyone in place. The sheriff's car screeched to a halt. The men scattered like cockroaches, leaving Daniel and me panting, bruised, but still standing. The sheriff stepped out, eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. "What the hell happened here?" he demanded. For once, I didn't stay silent. "What happened?" I said, spitting blood onto the dirt. "Is that we're done being your town's punching bag." The fight changed everything. Word spread fast about the ambush, about how we had fought back. Some people avoided us entirely. Others offered quiet nods of respect. And a few, surprisingly, spoke up in support. It was as if our refusal to hide had given others permission to stop hiding too. But not everyone softened. The hate didn't vanish overnight. It still lingered in glances, in whispers, in the occasional muttered slur. Yet something had shifted. For the first time, I felt like we weren't alone. Daniel and I moved in together officially a month later. His apartment was small, but it was ours. We filled it with mismatched furniture, thrift store finds, and laughter that echoed through every corner. The nights weren't always easy. Sometimes fear still woke me in the dark. Sometimes old wounds reopened. But every morning, I woke up to him. And that was enough. One evening, as autumn gave way to winter, we sat at the lake again. The trees were bare, the water still, the air sharp with cold. Daniel pulled a small box from his jacket, his hands trembling. My breath caught. "Daniel!" He opened it, revealing 2 simple silver bands. No diamonds, no spectacle, just a promise. "I don't care about the past anymore," he said, his voice steady despite the shake in his hands. "I don't care what this town thinks, or what anyone says. All I care about is this, us. I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that I'll never run again." Tears blurred my vision. For years, I had dreamed of hearing those words. For years, I had feared they would never come. And now, here he was, offering me not perfection, not certainty, but himself. "Yes," I whispered. My voice cracked, but the word was strong enough. "Yes." He slipped the ring onto my finger, his own tears spilling over. I did the same, my hands shaking as I slid the band onto his. And then we kissed, the cold air wrapping around us, the warmth of his lips anchoring me to a future I had once thought impossible. The night we told my family, I thought the world might split open. My mother cried. My father sat in silence. My sister reached across the table and squeezed Daniel's hand. "It's about time," she said with a smile. My mother's tears weren't disappointment, though. They were relief. "I just want you both safe," she whispered. And for the first time, I believed we might be. Not everyone in town showed up to the small ceremony we held months later. But enough did. Friends, family, a few brave neighbors who wanted to stand on the right side of history. We exchanged vows by the lake, our lake, the water glistening under the sun like it was blessing us. When Daniel said, "forever," I believed him. When I said it back, I meant it with everything I was. Life didn't magically become easy. There were still whispers, still moments when fear clawed back, still nights when we locked the door twice. But there was also love, loud, stubborn, unyielding love that refused to be silenced. We built a home. We carved out a space where we could breathe, laugh, fight, and dream. We faced the world together, hand in hand, hearts beating in sync. And those scars of the past never fully faded. They became reminders of what we had survived. Sometimes, when the house is quiet and the world feels soft, I think back to that first dinner, to the shock of seeing him across the table, to the chaos that followed, to the love that refused to die. We swore never to meet again, and yet here we are. Not broken, not hiding, not afraid. Together. And for the first time in my life, that's enough. Forever enough. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.